within the areas that you deem appropriate for medium density, and also accepting the associated qualifying matters or otherwise within those areas. Like I mentioned last time, there is quite an increased risk if council proceeds with alternative recommendations, i.e. rejections of IHP recommendations when making that zoning decision, because the bill states that those parts of where an alternative exists cannot be considered towards the yield that would otherwise be generated for the opt-out, subject to that being considered by the minister. So there's quite a risk there in terms of the dominoes that minister might have to consider the alternative. That takes time, and once that's considered, then consider the opt-out. And by that point, we might find ourselves short in terms of the time frame of December. So there's a real risk with that I want to highlight. The simplest means is simply accepting those parts of the IHP recommendations across the city in those areas if appropriate to meet that sufficiency yield. And what we've put forward is an example based on the feedback that we've had so far of how that can be delivered. The last part is really to delegate authority to staff to do that application. In practical sense, the way that we see it working is that in early September, we'd be making a zoning decision on the medium density, and then within that zoning decision would be the delegation to staff to be able to engage with the minister and write that application based on the operative extensive zoning that's been approved as well. In terms of deciding, like I said, for those medium density areas, council also needs to decide on the effective qualifying matters within those. All of these qualifying matters that are listed here, decisions have been made in part for those in previous Plan Change 14 decisions so far. So there isn't, I guess, anything new in terms of the type of qualifying matter. It's just being applied in new areas. In terms of the existing restrictions for qualifying matters that exist already in the district plan, on the left there in blue, all of those in terms of the IHP recommendations are unchanged in terms of what's the operative district plan. The only two caveats to the unchanged criteria are for the airport noise qualifying matter. As you know, that's been expanded and slightly changed the application. And then also for residential character areas, some of those boundaries have been refined, and the rules for those areas have also been refined in zoning as well. So those are the two, I guess, asterisks to in terms of what's been transferred over from existing into the new framework of qualifying matters. And then everything there on the right and the back side are new qualifying matters that have been proposed via Plan Change 14. All of those listed except sunlight access and the residential heritage area interfaces were accepted by the hearings panel and recommended in favour of. And so in terms of making that decision to accept the IHP recommendation, that's how that would be looking, is that all of those that are listed there, except the last two in the bullet point list for the new PC14 ones, would be approved if you accept the IHP recommendations. So we're very interested as part of this session or through any other means that you wish to share your views on the proposal that we've shared with you today in terms of whether or not they are the right areas, any other further engagement, one-on-one sessions, drop-in sessions, so on and so forth that you wish to do, and also whether or not you want any other additional workshops on formal decision. And yeah, very, very keen to hear your views on all of those matters.
Okay, excellent. We've got questions. Tyler, first, please.
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick ones. Are we able to get a map that actually has the street names? The map looks quite condensed, it's hard to read the street stuff.
Yep. Right? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And I'm noticing, I'm nitpicking here, but those white spaces, there are particular properties that I know of that would do really well with medium density, and maybe we can chat a bit more about that offline.
Yep.
Shands Reserve and the Shands area, from my understanding, that the character provision was pulled, and then you've got the airport noise contour, which is the
patch. Yeah.
You guys can see that. my understanding it wasn't medium density for that. It actually came up to Shands. Is it proposing to go extra into Shands Reserve?
Yeah, so at the moment, all of the Shands area is what's called RSDT, which is for medium density. We're limited to 2 stories. The proposal for all of what we're putting forward is that all that existing medium density areas like RSDT will transition to being medium density. So this whole corridor along Rickett Road density would include the Shands area. I guess the thing to note is that in terms of the character area controls, they exist still today. It's been referred to the minister. The minister may yet come in favour of the hearings panel, depending on we fall on the evidence. So it could, an eventuality could happen that should it be accepted in the zoning there, that it's a medium density zone with the character area and with the airport.
Well, that's really good public knowledge because we know that there's strong community push to try and get that filled out. The airport noise contour, can you talk to us about the restrictions? This is for public knowledge. Everyone's really passionate about this part. The airport noise contour, can you tell us about the level or the height restrictions based upon the airport noise contour?
So there are no height restrictions. The building form itself, there are no specific restrictions that are associated with the airport noise qualifying matter.
Yep.
It's just the number of units that occupy the individual site.
And you're reiterating also that there are no internal restrictions, for example, noise provisions of walls.
It's noise installation standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for any residential unit, regardless of how many units there are, like Sarah said, there are insulation standards and also mechanical ventilation requirements as well.
So, great. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for this. One of the questions I've got around airport noise contour, is there any way for us, this is probably outside of the scope, to go with the updated airport noise contour?
No, there's no scope within this. It's only for a qualifying matter that's quite separate to actually changing the district plan, what the noise contours for.
Yep. The enlargement of medium density around the Hornby area, I think what you've got there is probably about the most that could be accepted by the locals. So I think well done on that. Yet at the same time, none would be better, but I'm sure that that's not even an option from you.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, the way that we have run the numbers at the most restrictive, we're sitting at 66,000 in terms of what's commercially feasible. The requirement's 65. And so at its most restrictive, it just meets it.
Yep.
And so from our point of view, we've drafted this based on what we've heard so far, and we're open obviously to changes to that. But what we'd say is that if an area gets taken away, an equivalent must be found somewhere else.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got one wee question, Mike. And thank you very much for the work you've done to come up with these pink areas, which are, and as Mark said, everyone's, I shouldn't say taken a hit, but everyone's contributed to it, because if we don't, and I'm not saying we have to, if we don't agree to these big changes that are on here and tell the minister, he could say, right, that's it, boys, the whole city's
Whole city.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we don't accept what you've worked very hard to come up with as best you can and say, no, we're going to carry on fighting you, he'll just say, bang, that's it, the whole city's thing will go away.
Yeah, that could be an option. I mean, at the end of the day, the opt-out putting forward is an option.
Yeah, well,
Council doesn't have to opt out.
No.
Council can also go, great, we're going to make a decision on all of the IHP recommendation, which, like you say, is medium density everywhere. And on the basis that council checks that, the minister could conceivably say, look, you haven't met your duties to consider that. We've been in that position before in terms of having.
But you started to work very hard to get past that threshold of the 70,000. I commend for that, really great. But we've all sort of got to take everyone area got to take a bit of it. So I'm not happy, but this is otherwise the flip side is not good. Andre.
Thank you. We're going to bring up the map of the city. I'm trying to understand why you've got gaps in the MRT corridors between Mirabelle and Papanui, and between Church Corner and Hornby.
Yeah, so we've tried to, I guess, focus as much as possible on the centre-based approach, and then having those select areas where It's not affected directly by MRT as per the GCSP option. And so that's why I guess it's hugging, if you will, those centres. For the same token, we also don't have medium density between Papanui and Belfast either. Under the MRT option, that would be all through that extent as well. From our point of view, it's best to wait until, one, we have the protection, but two, once we have the protection, it'll be at a level where we are required, regardless of what we may or may not think, we're required to intensify along the full MRT corridor at that point. And so there's a real question that should be considered in terms of having the best yield for that area. Do we want that to be going to medium density and forego potential high density delivery, or do we want to wait a little longer and go, great, it's suburban, and then we'll go to high density potentially into the future for MRT? The work that we have considered today very much suggests that the leapfrogging in terms of density, so from suburban to high density, has the greatest chance of actually being delivered. If we have it going to medium density today or within the next month or so, there's a risk there that we forego any potential yields in terms of density within that area. And so from our point of view, we're being strategic about when we do it. That's our recommendation, and also that there will be that future direction as it is at the moment. In terms of the current National Policy Statement for Urban Development, it states that once the likes of an MRT development is in the RLTP and the Regional Land Transport Plan, we must do a plan change to enable high density within a walking kilometres of those areas.
So why isn't the same logic been applied to the Hill Morden area, for example?
Yeah, so that area isn't subject to an MRT.
No, so there'd be no MRT.
No.
Like the Hill Morden area around sort of, towards Turner Road, it's not near shopping centres, it's not near MRT. There's one bus service that is oversubscribed.
Well, there's
That's the end areas like between Papanui and Mirabel and not.
yeah, so
If that contradicts the logic of leaving those gaps.
yeah, so firstly, that whole corridor is identified in the GCSP in terms of intensification all the way to North Hallswell.
Yep.
Secondly, there is the dedicated bus lane that is under construction at the moment.
But they're on the buses. So why is the logic there different to the MRT corridors?
Because in the MRT corridors, we want to ensure that the widening that is that may be required to deliver MRT.
But you can still do that because we're having to, you're intensifying all the areas up to Church Corner, but not the rest, right?
No.
The key difference is the fact that the MRT corridor in the future will have further directed high density. So yes, you could, as an option, rezone the gap between Mirabel and Papanui. You could rezone that medium density now, and then in the future, it may be upzoned, once an MRT stop's identified. So that is an option, either include it now or keep it as the suburban zoning. So those are the two options.
And the main risk,
that option will not, it's not going to happen down Lincoln.
that's right. And the main risk really is around those front lots about the road widening. And so for all of these options, we don't have any front lot medium density. And so that's our protection that we've got. It's the best tool that we have at this point.
Yeah, but we don't have to put these in front lots, right? It's up to us to zone where these things, that's where we want to go. I'm just wondering why there's not looking at adding more high density zoning anywhere.
It can't be done. So the only lens that we have in terms of providing sufficient yield is to accept more of the hearings panel's recommendation on medium density.
Yeah, not in terms of those numbers, but what's stopping us from adding more high density zoning now?
It's not within the scope.
It's not within the scope.
You've already decided.
So we're not allowed to add any more high density zoning at this point.
No, that's a different plan change process.
The high density is a policy 3 response, which we decided in December.
Yeah, so the entire purpose is to enable more housing. So I guess my point is we should be writing to the minister to ask for that kind of thing. Right now, we've got a plan to build a donut city, and it's right here, as we can see. So there's a great big gap in the centre where we're not allowed to upzone.
No, that's already zoned for high density.
No, it's not. So
Central City.
it's not really Morehouse, isn't it? It's literal donut on the screen here, right? So we've got, so there's got to be a point here where we're writing to the minister asking him to just enable an upsize for housing.
Yeah.
Which he'll be very surprised to get, but we need to do it, otherwise we're building a donut city.
Just to clarify, it is high.
It is high density in the middle. That's the central city, which is high density.
No, it's in the middle.
So it's around Morehouse there.
Andre.
Being part of the central city, that's an orange, right? That's high density.
Andre, I asked if we were able to, like, because the minister's just been given new powers, being given new powers.
Precisely.
So I asked,
Yeah.
and the new powers are limited and won't be able to overturn the thing. So I asked it like
Yeah.
a couple of weeks back, if we could write to them and say, could you overturn our previous decision, that the tide vote to not upzone it, to not recommend it? And the advice I got back was that we weren't able to do that because his powers don't extend to that.
Yeah, so this is
But there
This is a-
legislation.
this is a product of the RMA reform. And so the end of this year, the changes to the RMA or replacement draft will be released, and we'll be getting a multi-year process to do that. And that is really the opportunity to deliver whatever the case may be in terms of high density. It's not this process.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to move along. Still got 5 questions. Victoria.
Thanks. My first question is actually on your memo of 31 July, and I know you haven't presented on it, but I know that it underpins this. So at paragraph 2.15 on the last page, I'm just having trouble putting this together because it says, council is reminded that the actual projected household demand for Christchurch is 27,600 dwellings over the next 7 years. So does that make this whole thing academic, really?
It does.
The demand doesn't exist.
Well, that's exactly our point. As a reminder, yes, it's a lot of money, a lot of houses, and yes, it might just meet the criteria, but the criteria is an inflation of what is actually projected. Actual projection is 27.
Okay, so just because these things are zoned like that doesn't mean that the demand is going to be there.
No, this is about 71 years worth of projection.
One thing this does show though, this is where it is commercially feasible.
Yeah.
So what this
Right.
indicates, if you might think about that demand, is where it's likely to be taken up
Yeah.
and is in these areas.
Sure, more likely than others. So the next question then is, recognising that the option number 1, which is the all PT, following on from Andre's question, I think it's unlikely that we'll be recommending that because we know that the demand's just not there. Well, what does that actually mean for that designations piece of work that we were intending to do? Do we still need to do that if we will be further directed to have high density along that route anyway?
Yes,
Does that
so-
mean that we don't have to go to the hassle of doing the designations piece?
Yes, I mean, to answer both sort of questions there, this isn't the end of planning. This isn't the end of what we'll need to do in the future to do with upzoning further land. There is, after the RMA reform, we'll be directed to, most likely, to do a regional spatial plan. That regional spatial plan will then is the opportunity to bring in these other areas such as Sydenham, to identify around the mass rapid transit stops. It's really at that point, the fact that we'll be in a better position to further upzone. So in 2 years, over the next 2 years, we'll be doing that work, and that's the best time to proceed.
But the regional spatial plan,
Yes.
we've already done the Greater Christchurch.
Yes, that's the next updated, next
Yeah.
stage.
That's a product of the RMA reform. Doing a region.
Okay, the next piece that I'm struggling with is on page 4, we've got that graph that shows the 5 options against the required yield. And when you look at the July workshop option alongside the number 2, which is the census-based approach, there's really only a difference of taking into account the figures that are also in your memo of 1,000 homes if you take all the qualifying matters, and 1,500 you do no qualifying matters.
Yep.
So that seems quite small, but when I look at the graph with all the coloured and pink bits, that seems like it's way more than 1,000 and 1,500. I can't put those two pieces together.
Yeah, so the proposal that we've put forward, just to be completely clear, does 100% of the centre-based approach. And so it primarily is the centre-based approach, which is just all the different walking catchments. The only change really is to be applying strategically the GCSP direction. And so it's only really the corridor that exists between North Borsmore and Sydenham, which is a small section, which is addition to the centre-based approach, and then also the corridor between Northwood and Belfast as well. There's only a small change from the centre-based approach, and that's why it's only a small difference.
No, I still don't get it.
Yes.
Because I was looking at all the shaded and pink bits.
Yes.
Because I thought that the July option,
Now,
and all the
this
pink bits.
This
What
is
am I
the,
missing?
no, this is
that's
the
right.
complexity to do with the commercial feasibility model. If you think about the centres, you think around most centres, they've already experienced quite a bit of development. So where you're developed and you've already got multi-unit townhouse development, that won't
Be shown.
show in as commercially viable. Where you get the most commercially viable land, in other words, if you bowl down that house and put 345 on it, that 345 might be the commercially viable count. You achieve more commercial viability, multi-unit development when it's not already developed. So it can't count anything, it will not count anything that's already got townhouse on it.
It's
It
just,
basically discounts it off.
it's
It's not
not-
viable.
yeah, it's not
Roll it
viable.
down and rebuild it. Yes.
So it's incorrect to think that commercial feasibility yield is static across the city. Most certainly is. Very much depends on the local context of the site and it's been developed.
Okay. So then the final one, can you go back to those qualifying matters? Are you, the existing restrictions and those proposed by PC14? No, not that one, qualifying matters to decide on. Then, are you asking us to decide which ones we want to apply?
Well, you need to decide whether or not you accept the IHP's recommendation. Fundamentally, what we're saying is that if you reject any of the IHP's recommendations, there is a risk,
Yeah.
quite a big risk. And so if you want to proceed as cleanly as possible with proceeding with an opt-out, the easiest is to accept the IHP recommendations, including those qualifying matters.
Thank you.
Hey.
Clear as mud.
Right, we've gone bad. Aaron.
Yeah, the one one's been shot down, but it is very important in this is around the pointing lines, because according to the finance group, it's around 15,000 seats. And we can still drag the chain, that review, like, why the left-hand can't talk, like, just on the side. Why could that not be just?
It's only, it's actually not within the scope.
Anyway,
All this does,
Yeah.
all the airport noise contour, the IHP recommended that just 4 or more units, you have to insulate when you're in that contour area.
so it does not count.
Really, it doesn't have too much bearing on the number of houses you can, as a permitted activity. The airport noise contour, as recommended by the IHP, is only really about insulation, requiring insulation and mechanical ventilation, and also triggering a need for resource consent beyond 4 units. So really, it doesn't, the qualifying measure itself isn't preventing development underneath that hatched area.
But I, the noise.
That's different. That is the operative plan at the moment.
Yes.
That's not within the scope of this clean change.
Yeah, so
Okay, so, right, moving right along. So I just want to clarify in everyone's head. We are all of the same opinion that we want to opt out. We're all of that opinion.
I'm not, it's this.
Staff have gone away and given us an avenue to do the opt-out. Thank you very much. We should agree with this. I'm not telling you what to do. If we agree with this, it gives the minister the opportunity to say, yes, guys, you've done what I asked, you can opt out. Then we can play with it a little bit after that.
No,
no,
No? Okay, no, I'm just
No.
wondering if we could.
no.
no. So what we're seeking a decision on is what will be zoned.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was talking about the high density stuff.
Oh,
That's like.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
But this, what you've done here, which is great, gives us the avenue of what we asked you to do, to go to the minister and opt out, and then you can have Christmas off and not even think of PC14. Okay, right, Timothy.
I might have missed a bit when you were explaining it, but
There is not so important, but the residential heritage area interface and what's the important one is the sunlight access. If we opt out, are we able to revisit those?
No, so this is the sunlight particularly is quite a risk because that applies to all residential areas. So if we were to go the same route as what we had in December in terms of rejecting the hearings panel's recommendation and saying that the sunlight access qualifying matter should be progressed, that is a qualifying matter that would apply across all residential areas. And then all residential areas couldn't be counted towards that yield. So that is a standout qualifying matter that really, if council wants to opt out, it practically cannot proceed with. You have to accept the IHP recommendation. We need to accept some give and take if we want to opt out.
So it's got to take the greater good rather than.
That's right. And to be clear, in terms of the MDRS recession planes, that only applies across those medium and high density areas. We're not talking about its application across here, there and everywhere. It's a targeted approach, which is the fundamental outcome of opt out.
You can think of it again as another cookie cutter. So you're adding another bigger cookie cutter, and the qualifying matter for that bit you've cut out, that qualifying matter will apply in that area. It won't need to apply anywhere beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tyrone?
Hello. So in the camp of, thank you, Dave. Just on the Littleton slide.
Yep.
If we can jump to that, numbers page 16. So how did we come to about 2 houses? I mean, part of that is like a church, and another part of it's like the oldest house in Canada, in Littleton, or not Canterbury. So like, how did those things come to fall within the medium density residential zone?
Yeah, so the zoning needs to be seen alongside the restrictions. And so just because it's medium density zone doesn't mean that it's can be fully intensified. It has to be seen against those other qualifying matters. So like I said, at Littleton, the character area is the biggest one. That applies across all of it. That means that you must achieve resource consent for any residential development. Similarly, for likes of heritage sites and the like, they will also still apply within medium density. They work together. And so they all are part of this in terms of the medium density that you can see there in the green in this image. That's all that currently exists. And that was a product of the hearings panel recommendation for having medium density within a 200 metre walking catchment. Pretty black and white really about where they wanted to that be drawn. What we're saying is that this presents as an opportunity to deliver that better. You don't need to do this. This is a very small area in terms of yield. We're not looking at this from a sufficiency perspective. We're looking at this about getting things better. So if you don't want this, then that's fine, but we need that feedback.
Okay, can I just have a quick follow up? Is that right? Sorry, just very quickly. So, I mean, the 200 metre walking catchment doesn't make sense because you've kind of got a bit over there, like St David Street, which actually we've got to walk a mile around to try and get down to the centre, and then at the other end of the street, we've got nothing.
Yeah. So again, this is operative. We can't change that.
Yeah.
We're trying to make what we have done.
Okay.
Good. Yanni and then Todd.
Is there any way that this, like particularly around the stuff around the East Gate, can be incorporated into the regeneration plan? I mean, I'm just trying to understand how we actually engage the community around what's possible, because people currently, and we heard one of this morning actually give a really good example of what she saw as concerns around medium density, but it's not to say that people don't like want good designed houses, for example. So I'm just trying to understand, like, you know, particularly for that Linwood area where there's been huge, I don't know if you've seen the infill that's gone in Jolly Street, for example, by Kangaroa, but it's not particularly pleasant. It's you know, it's just lots of houses without any sort of thought about how people move through the area, safety, crime prevention through environmental design or anything like that. It's just chucking as many houses as possible. So like, is there a process that we can use around actually good urban design as part of this, so that we can work with communities around what the outcomes are?
Not through this process, not through the district plan, I would say.
We are working as part of like the urban design team and the like guidance material on achieving best outcomes. And so a lot of the provisions that we have through plan change for medium density are new. And we're currently in the final stages of releasing that public material and guidance as much as we can for how that can be delivered better, like you say, with all those issues that you've addressed. And then I'll let Sarah speak to regeneration future.
Yes, I mean, just briefed about local area planning, and there are some ways to plan areas that are experiencing higher density, such as streetscape connections, sometimes acquiring through-block connections, but that really is in the realm of local area planning rather than through the district plan. This is focused on where areas will be provided for more housing development opportunities.
So basically things like flooding, things like lack of car parking or lack of cycling facilities, lack of safe access ways, that doesn't matter. This is simply about you can just build as many houses as you like under the district plan.
Yes, I mean, there's been a direction for district plans to be more enabling, and that's occurred through the previous district plan and again through this medium density standards. I mean, they are specified standards in the Resource Management Act, and we have to go through that process. And you know, we can't put rules in where they're not, you know, they haven't, the IHP haven't recommended that they be put in place.
What's the buffer between the industrial and that Bromley area that you're proposing for medium zoning?
I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest, but as part of this, there is the industrial interfaces qualified matter that was accepted by the hearings panel. And so if there is an interface that exists there with medium density, then that would also apply. And that means that height is limited to 2 stories, and then upper limit space like oriented away from that industrial area.
Just that when you
Thank you.
when you make complaints around like noise from those, it looks like on the grey area, just where the pink bit is to the sort of west, to the east and the east. Is that industrial? Like, what's the grey signifying?
That's the part of that is the cemetery part of that right area.
Okay, so the grey stuff is not residential. It's
Yeah, it's all the either open space or industrial, like so it's non-residential areas.
Thank you, guys. Tyler, and then we're going to have 10 minutes.
Okay, so, really quick, guys. The first question was around exclusionary zoning, not particularly just social housing, but student accommodation. But there are provisions to be able to allow that.
Not through this.
Okay. And the next one, that's on top of my mind, that's coming. I'll ask you after this. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you so much for all the work you've done towards us. This hasn't been easy, and you've had to have grabbed out of the hat, so the way I look at it. But so thanks for bringing us up to speed. So you've got what you want.
Well, we've got we've got some feedback, but
ideally, sit back and say no one wants MDRS over the whole city. So
yeah. So the position that we're looking to get to an ideal start point of view is to say this is what we want to make a decision on. We do not want to be in a council decision setting. We're going, oh, we're going to add this area, we're going to move this area and alike, because we don't know what the yield is. It needs to be tested beforehand. So if you're interested in another area or want to remove another area, tell us beforehand. You're running a significant risk if you're chopping and changing on.
because at the 11th hour, you won't know. We won't. I won't be allowed to allow it, so to speak. Otherwise, we're going to end up in strike.
No, feasibility is not static.
Yeah.
So if you want to know about an area, change it, so on and so forth, tell us.
And to reinforce, those pink areas are essentially the minimum that we need to put forward in terms of spatial extent to meet that requirement.
Yep. Any
Otherwise,
reduction
we'll have it everywhere. Thank you very much. Good on you.